Vorhies, who is a Google whistleblower. He just came out with a new book, and we're going to be talking about Google leaks today with Zach. It came out, I believe, a week or two ago. And I hope you all pick up your copy of the book, Google Leaks. Zach is a wealth of information. We've been following him here at the Gateway Pundit since 2019 when he came public and went public on the whistleblower, as a whistleblower with Google. And he's been speaking out ever since. So this ought to be very informative this morning. Zach, tell us what that image was that you held up there.
Oh yeah, so this was, I don't know if you can, oh sorry, I forgot to put this on. So what this is a slide from Google's internal messages that says that they're trying to get rid of Breitbart and cancel their ad revenue. So what it says right here is, anyone want to hold their nose and look through Breitbart.com for hate speech? Hate is really difficult since writers have become very artful at demeaning other groups without being explicit about it. That said, do review Breitbart pages against our hate policies, and we have stopped showing ads on policy violating pages we found. We're working to improve our ability to do this at scale. And here's the worst part. When sufficient violations have been found, we'll take action at the site level. So this is Google's employees looking at Breitbart, looking for anything that violates their hate speech policies so that they can cut them off from all of their revenue.
Well, thank you, Zach, for opening with that. At Gateway Pundit, as you can imagine, we've been a victim of similar tactics from Google. I really can't begin to tell you what they've done to Gateway Pundit, but you know some of this, and we actually got some of this information from you in some of your earlier reporting. As far as the Google advertising, I don't think most of our audience knows that Google is one of the largest internet advertisers. As far as what I have heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Google, Facebook, and Amazon are about 75% of the ads that are supplied on the internet. Is it something like that? Is that what you've heard?
I think it's higher than that when you take all of big tech in. Google has a monopoly in web display advertising, and they form the revenue backbone for all of these sites. And right now, the DOJ has been investigating Google based upon its ad monopolies, strangely not its search monopolies, because apparently the business community is more concerned about this wielding of power with the ad revenue, because that basically touches a whole bunch of news websites and websites in general on the internet. And as you'll probably know, that you've been hit hard by Google and their organic traffic. And, you know, actually, here's a question for you, Jim. Are you guys running Google ads yourself on the Gateway Pundit?
You know, that's a great question, because Forbes just came out with a report, and it was a hit piece on Gateway Pundit, and that was in the last 2 weeks. And what they said was that Gateway Pundit, you know, this fake news conspiracy website, has made $1.6 million from Google advertising since the election by pushing conspiracies on the election. And we looked back at our records, and it's obviously much less than that. And I can tell you that we looked back, it's much, much, much less than that. Okay. Google is not one of our main advertisers. And because, of course, they've already blocked us. And that happened years ago, before you even came out as a whistleblower. This was basically after the 2016 election, when Donald Trump won. We started seeing all of this censorship from Google, from Facebook, from Twitter. Since then, we've been eliminated from Twitter. Facebook, our traffic, you know, they get to the point where they don't want you to put up anything anymore. And I think they're satisfied with that. As long as you don't post any more of your stories on Facebook, they'll allow you to be there. But they will not allow you to put up your stories. And with Facebook, they if one of your readers puts up your story, they'll get blocked, they'll get shut down. So it's not just Gateway Pundit that gets shut down, but it's our readers. So they're conditioning people as we know, this is their plan. We saw the Twitter Jack Dorsey say this in a congressional hearing, actually, that they want to condition people. Okay, they want to condition their behavior, and that's exactly what they're doing, because now our readers know that if they put up a Gateway Pundit article on Facebook, they could be shut down. So again, it's all of the tech giants. I know with Google, I can tell you this, Zach, little background. If you do take a headline from a Gateway Pundit article and you post it up on the internet on Google for a search, you'll find knockoff sites that steal our information word for word. Their articles will show up, but our article will not be in this list. If you do a search on Gateway Pundit on Google, what you'll find is conspiracy, right wing conspiracy, fake news, all
the hit pieces.
And then maybe on page 3, sometimes you might find a link to Gateway Pundit. So this is what they're doing. And it's, for a long time, I took it personally. I thought, oh gosh, this is just us. We really need to improve our game. But now, of course, I know that this is everyone who is a threat, anyone who is successful. And they're hitting Republicans and conservatives across the board. You could be a little podunk website in some county, and Facebook will shut you down or censor your content based on what you're putting up. So I'm so glad.
The reason why they're doing this, and there's one slide that sort of puts it all together for me and illustrates very clearly why Google's doing it. And I put it as one of the first chapters of my book. Let's see if we can do that. So it's literally people like us are programmed, and it's a 4-step process. And it starts off with training data are collected and classified, algorithms are programmed, media are filtered, ranked, aggregated, or generated, and then the last step here, people like us are programmed. And that cycle repeats over and over and over again, and that moves a population left or right depending on their access to information. And if you say, well, Zach, are you basing too much off that one slide? I want to let you know, Jim, that I found this people are programmed slide in different forms in 3 other places within the Google documents. So Google is very serious about, using its search engine manipulation in order to program people like us. And that's actually, one of the things that was scariest to me and made me realize that I needed to get this information out to people, because Google promised us that they were going to deliver organic search results. Instead, what they've done is that they've replaced those organic search results with a highly refined, highly processed search results that they want you to consume for political purposes. And one of the big stories that's come out in the last week is how Google rewrote their news algorithms based on the Trump-Comey fight that they were having. And what Google wanted to do is that Google wanted to get negative stories about Trump on top of the search index. And so they looked at the stories that came out on Trump and Comey, and they said, how can we take these stories and then merge them so that they're coalesced or folded into a single event? And then when there's news stories that come out day by day, those get detected as being part of this larger event, and then those are boosted all the way to the top. And this wasn't something that they were doing before Trump. This was something that happened during Trump's presidential administration. And
it's frightening.
It's frightening.
And we all saw this, of course. Maybe not, we weren't conscious about it, but certainly we see this now. We see it because we're a victim of this. And we may have a story that goes completely viral on the internet from our readers, but it's not listed in Google. It's not going anywhere on Facebook. So we've seen this a lot with Gateway Pundit. And again, I can't thank you enough for having the courage to come out when you did and exposing this. I think a couple questions I have is, it doesn't seem that there's much remorse with the people at Google or those on the left for shutting down opinions. Is this what you found?
What I found at Google was that the majority of my colleagues fell into either two categories, either indoctrinated leftists or basically kind of apathetic liberals. And the apathetic liberals were kind of like scared about what was going on, but they thought that it would sort of blow over. Where the indoctrinated leftists bought into the whole like neo-Nazi narrative, and they were afraid that that Trump represented a fascist rise to power, and they were pretty much okay with anything happening in order to stop that. And when people ask what destroyed Google, I literally believe that Trump derangement syndrome, TDS, destroyed Google.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we see this with other reporters out there today, too. So it goes on with Google, which is the most important website in the world, the most powerful website in the world. And then it carries over to some of these leftists who, with glee, are cheering when grandma with a MAGA flag is arrested for walking inside the Capitol on January 6th. Mm-hmm. So it's really amazing to me watching this, because they're calling us the fascists, you know, and the racists, all the names they call us, while they're pushing to silence people and pushing anyone, you know, punishing them gleefully if they have a different opinion than them. So it really is just stunning what's happening in our culture today. I don't see it getting any better at the moment. Are you seeing any progress now? Do you think that there's any hope in the future besides your book and people like you coming out? Do you see anything happening?
Yeah. So I have been thinking about this problem of censorship and the scourge of it. And I've been working on a software product that I'm about to release. I'm not releasing it yet because this book's been really popular with the president retweeting about it. But this software package that I'm going to release is.
Excuse me. He didn't retweet it, did he?
He didn't retweet it. He's on Twitter. I'm sorry, I used the wrong language. He posted on his blog, for lack of a
Telegram page too, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. About the book, about the article about the book.
Fantastic.
So, but I've got a software package that's going to come out. It's going to fix the censorship problem. I can't tell you what it is right now because it's still in testing, but it is going to solve the censorship problem by aggregation. Aggregation cancels censorship. And when the rest of the tech community sort of figures this out, and they're already starting to figure this out a little bit, what we're going to see is that fragmentation that's caused by censorship to be solved by aggregating all this content on all these different sites together under one single page. Basically what we need is the Drudge Report, but for video. And that is something that I'm going to release in the next month. And when it happens, I believe that, I think it's going to get copied, but on the other hand, that's okay with me because we really need to have a solution for the censorship problem.
Well, that's very exciting. So you're saying that that's going to be video content that you're going to be able to put up on a separate website, similar to Drudge. And who's going to be running the website?
Oh, I'm running the website. So it goes out like a spider, and it crawls Rumble, BitChute, Brighteon, Odyssey, and what it does is it grabs that video content as an RSS stream, and then it remixes it onto a website. So you go to it and you'll see everything that 250 content creators have posted that day in chronological order. And it scans it every once an hour in order to get that content. So instead of playing the social media shuffle where you're going from one website to another website, it's literally all in one place in a dashboard. And it looks really like I did it artfully too. So I think it's going to be really popular.
Fantastic. Now, will this be based on popularity of the articles? How will it be based, or is it just on opinion?
I've got a popularity tab, but right now it's just in chronological order of all the websites that have posted video today in this conservative inclusion list that I've created because I've been tracking everyone. So that's the way that it works. Pretty much just like the Drudge Report.
Yeah, till Drudge went left. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I've written about you several times over the years. I was going to ask you about a couple of these questions. It looks like you're still working with Project Veritas. Is that correct?
I volunteer with them. They've been on stage like 3 times in July, and I was flying around with them, which was an amazing experience to be able to have that. Never thought I'd have it. But yeah, I've been palling around with Project Veritas for this last month of July. And now James O'Keefe is doing a Broadway act, believe it or not.
I didn't even know Broadway was open, let alone James O'Keefe doing an act. That's
Yeah.
great.
Pretty amazing.
So is it this is news. Is this common knowledge? Has this been reported?
Yeah, Jack Posobiec tweeted about it yesterday. So check it
Oh, I
out.
missed that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I hope he does some dancing. Have you ever seen him dance?
Yeah, for that music video, Oligarchy. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's a very good dancer. We had
Yeah.
a dance off one time where I was at.
Really?
That's exciting. You've reported not just on Google, but on some of these other tech giants. I actually posted something in November 2020 that you were, it credits you as the author, and it was Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut, Da Nang Dick, as Trump would call him, and he was questioning Zuckerberg on why he allows certain websites to continue. And of course, it's Breitbart, Gateway Pundit, Eric Trump, Steve Bannon on Facebook, so things like that. Actually, this was a story that you had written about or is linked to you somehow. But again, so you've been following this not just on Google but on the other platforms.
Yeah, and I want to put a warning out. What Google is doing with their AI and their AI censorship is very concerning, because with blacklists, at least there's like a human readable format of what's getting censored. What Google is doing right now with its machine learning fairness is that by taking these blacklists and putting it into an AI system, what they're effectively doing is that they're hiding their blacklists in AI. Because no one can open up these AIs and understand what's going on. It's almost like trying to figure out someone's mental state by looking at a dissection of their brain. And with at least with human readable code, even if not everyone can read it, at least programmers can read it, and at least you can do discovery. We're entering into an age right now where we're having this mystical, superpowered, godlike AI, black box that's going to be making decisions on our culture, on the content, what's okay, what's not, what is free to be amplified and what's not free to be amplified. And if it's an AI, then they can train it to filter whatever they want. And even if they're compelled under discovery to expose what that is, no one, not even the person that trained the classifier itself, is going to be able to open that up and tell you what that AI is doing. And that's the reason why AI is so dangerous, is because no one can look, not even the creator, can know and understand or analyze what's going on with the neural net. It's just a collection of neurons, simulated neurons firing on each other with a distributed weights. And like I said, it's like looking at neurons under a microscope and trying to figure out what someone's behavior is on the gestalt. And this is the big existential problem that AI censorship, faces for America.
Great. I'm so glad you discussed that. Have you seen, in your opinion, or if you have facts to back this up, if this has affected elections in the United States or elsewhere, what they're doing?
What's really interesting is Dr. Robert Epstein
Right.
did a study on this. And what he did is he took people that were undecided on an issue and then gave them a search engine to find out information on an issue. And depending on this custom tailored search engine and the results that it would return, whether conservative or left-leaning, he was able to switch the person's point of view 90-10 in either direction.
That's shocking. Yeah, I saw as part of his work. I didn't know if you supported his work or not.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he was one of the reasons why I blew the whistle on Google, is because I saw how Google was bullying him and calling him a conspiracy theorist while on the inside of the company, I could verify that everything that he was saying was absolutely correct. In fact, he might not have gone far enough in his predictions.
Oh my gosh, that's frightening. Well, it must be so frustrating, and you can sense that with these tech giants when they see that someone like a Trump still has the success that he has, and still has the throngs of people and the excitement that people have around this person, which shows you that there must be something else involved besides just the indoctrination that the tech giants are giving us. And maybe it's just people see the reality and aren't as easily brainwashed as what we're seeing Google attempting to do.
Yeah, I definitely think that the population is getting resistant to the propaganda, almost like a diabetic gets resistant to insulin. And the solutions seem to be the same in both cases. For the diabetic, they're given more insulin. And for the population, they're given more propaganda. And now it seemed to kind of go into a dimension of the unreal and the bizarre. And I think that that's just because what we see is the main power structure of the elite, which has been the mass acceptance of the propaganda, is beginning to fail in the United States. And there's a curse. May you live in interesting times.
I think you're absolutely correct, because I think they just don't hold the weight anymore. We're seeing that at Gateway Pundit, with all the censorship that we undergo, that our numbers continue to rise. Every half year, every year, they're up significantly, and this is they've taken everything from us, and they're even punishing us with the ads. It's a godsend that people still continue to try to find this truth and go out to places like Breitbart and Gateway Pundit and Steve Bannon's War Room and other places to get their information. So that's very hopeful, at least for us. It's worked for us so far.
Could you imagine what would happen if they didn't have this censorship, where the Gateway Pundit would be right now?
Yeah. Well, I right now we're ranked 190 in the country of all websites.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
That's with the Alexa US rankings, and our traffic is 2.6 million readers a day this past few weeks. So if we actually had our Facebook, if we had a Twitter account, if Google was actually allowing some of our articles to go through, I don't know if it'd be twice as big or where it would be, but we'd certainly be in one of the top, We'd be right up there with the porn websites, let me tell you, who get a lot of traffic. But it's a shame. But, again, I'm grateful that people continue to search and try to find the truth. And because a lot of things just don't ring true. I think you're absolutely correct saying that the liberal media, the Googles, their statements are just absolutely bizarre at this point. Good example this week. They said that the rise of the Taliban is based on global warming in Afghanistan, and their success is based on global warming. And you're like, people read this garbage and they're like, at some point you just have to, just walk away from this nonsense, and they become nonsensical. Same with Dr. Fauci, who changes his mind every week, and I think is a mass killer. I think the fact that he banned these certain drugs was a huge mistake. He did the same thing in the AIDS epidemic. I think he's behind a lot of deaths, and people still seem to listen to this guy. And a lot of people, though, are like walking away when they see that you don't have to wear a mask if you get a vaccine. Now you do have to wear a mask. You may have to wear 2 masks. It never ends. So again, they're shooting themselves in the foot by being ridiculous, but they're desperate. And did you feel that at Google, that these people are just desperate to control?
Yeah, but what's weird is that they're playing weird games in order to get their agenda across. And let me give you an example. Every week there would be an all-hands company meeting, and essentially radical leftists would implore the leadership at Google to deplatform what they called Nazis. Like, they're saying the Nazis are getting a foothold. Why are we platforming them? And then the Google management would respond, oh, we're looking into it. We're trying to find policy violating sites and remove them. And that was something that was happening on a weekly basis. It was a certain sect of people. It was, I almost hate to say it, but I'm just going to say it, the trans neurotics is what I would call them. And for some reason, this group was the one that was driving most of the censorship at Google continuously, vigilantly, basically SJWs on steroids. And I assumed that the same thing was happening at Facebook and Twitter. And let me tell you, I think that the crime of the century is the fact that Google censored not only ivermectin, not only hydroxychloroquine, but they are now censoring people that are saying that vitamin C and vitamin D should be taken to lessen the effects of COVID-19, which is totally supported by the science.
Right.
Vitamin C is known to help in a number of metabolic processes, as vitamin D. Vitamin D is the precursor to 1,000 enzyme reactions in your body. And you want to have as much of those as possible when you're fighting off any sort of infection, especially COVID-19. And what Susan Wachowski said on CNN last year was that videos saying that you should take vitamin C and vitamin D would be flagged for removal.
Right.
And my question is, if we make it through this, are we going to have a Nuremberg trial 2.0? Because that's what we need right now.
I agree.
These CEOs have blood on their hands and should be arrested for negligent homicide at the very, very least. And they're getting away with whatever they want to say. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. Going back to my twin brother, who was an auditor in Hong Kong, ran teams across East Asia. One of the things we caught early on was the WHO, World Health Organization, was saying it was a 3.5% mortality rate from this coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And we were looking at the results and we're like, that isn't true. It wasn't a hard, thing to see. It just wasn't true. And even back then it was about 0.6 or 0.5. And I think it's much lower than that, actually, because, some people have the disease, don't know they have the disease.
Right.
So we were able to, we posted on that. A couple other things we posted on coronavirus, the hydroxychloroquine, the studies that are still being conducted that still show success. And that's where the tech giants, Google, shut us down, put these warning flags on our posts. And we were 100% correct. I think we're still correct on that. I believe we are. And I'm so glad that you bring that up. By the way, did you mention that in your book about the coronavirus? Did you have, and also about the radical trans community in Google? Did you talk about that in your book?
Yes, and a little bit. I didn't want to go too hard on them just because even though I am, angry, like we accepted them transformed our society, and then, I see them come in and push this radical change at Google to push the censorship. At the same time, I also feel for them because they're going through enormous, dysphoria. And I think that that's something that we need to look at and ask ourselves why this happens and whether this is happening in other parts of, in other companies around the United States. There's also another problem that I didn't mention in the book, but I think I should mention now, which is that YouTube seems to be being filled with H-1B visas. And the thing is that we should not be giving control of our culture to people that aren't from the United States, that don't understand the Constitution, don't understand how important the Constitution is. And if these people are given control over the levers of our culture and our country and what it means, then what we're going to find is that they're not going to care about our flag, our Constitution, our founding fathers, the ideals that make America unique.
Absolutely.
And we need to start looking at Google as not just an existential threat, but as possibly an agent of foreign power. That's using its monopolistic power in order to subvert the United States with misinformation, with propaganda, and to scramble our minds to such an extent that we we cannot perceive reality in a way that we can protect our country, our family, and ourselves from foreign subversion and being toppled in a possible crisis or future war. And I want to point out China in this respect because we know that there's been a lot of misinformation about that. And what's interesting is that a Facebook memo was released by Project Veritas. And in this Facebook memo, it was said that diversity hire candidates should be prioritized from mainland China and South Korea. And a lot of the buzzwords that are flying around corporate Silicon Valley right now are diversity and inclusion. But with this memo, it looks like it's not about diversity and inclusion, but disempowering a certain race within America and handing that off to foreign immigrants. And
Right.
I haven't seen a memo like that in Google, but that's something that we need to take very seriously. And if the right can get back into power, then we need to hold congressional meetings and start investigating these companies.
Oh, I agree. We spoke out about this for years at Gateway Pundit, and I actually spoke in front of Congress in 2018 talking about Facebook. It could have been any of the tech giants, but it was Facebook that I was speaking out about. Here's a question. I always was wondering this, and this goes to what you were just talking about. Do they have an orientation for foreign workers that explain freedom of speech, that explain the right to assemble, all of these things that make America great? Is there anything that you're aware of that goes to these new hires?
No, nothing that's like pro-American like that. We have an implicit bias training, which we get to take a computer program that tells us how racist we are. That eventually was debunked by the Wall Street Journal in 2017.
Wow.
But nothing where we're teaching pro-American values. We had like what are googly values, which prior to 2016 included organizing the world's information and making it universally accessible and useful. And in fact, despite all the craziness that Google has done with their censorship, they actually still have that as a mission statement. But I think what they've done is that they've reclassified what information means to mean whatever it is that they want to mean, and anything that's not is misinformation and not their responsibility to organize and make universally accessible. And so, similar to how Animal Farm repurposed the word equality, Google is repurposing the word information.
And they're misleading users then. Isn't there some contract they have with the public with when they put out statements like this and they're not fulfilled? Is there any legal consequences for the company that you're aware of?
Well, I think that there should be. I think that that's constituting fraud against the investor class. I think the SEC should look into it, saying, hey, look, you literally said you were going to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. They're clearly not doing that right now. When they're getting rid of people like Rand Paul for suspension because they don't like the things that he says as a politician.
Or as a doctor.
As a doctor. I mean, that's the intersection of a politician and a medical expert.
Yeah.
Then they need to be held accountable with the SEC, investigation and fined millions, if not billions of dollars for the things that they've done to mislead their investors on what the nature of the company was supposed to do. Like, it switched on a dime in 2016. As soon as Donald Trump was elected, it was 1 week later, they were talking about filtering fake news and creating design documents on how to accelerate this machine learning fairness into their search corpuses.
Right.
And nothing's happened as a result of that. And at the very least, it should be false advertisement and fraud to their investors.
I agree with you. And you know what is interesting as I look back at 2016, we saw that they were talking about fake news even before the election. So I believe it was a plan from Hillary Clinton, from her cabal, to shut down some of these voices that were persistent and continue to give them problems. So win or lose, it was something in the works, but it went tenfold when Trump ended up surprising them and winning the election.
And I want to add to that, Stanford, 2014, Machine Learning Fairness was their program. And
Uh,
this Stanford project got ingested into Google and then turned on during the 2016 election a little bit, like barely turned on.
right.
And then by obviously 2020, that the dial had been turned all the way up to 11.
Yeah. And it continues to this day, even more so. One thing I wanted to point out too, when I've been to Asia to visit my brother when he was over there, you turn on the news and anything about Trump, conservatives was always, the worst thing ever. These are horrible people, in the foreign news. That's how they represented the conservatives in America. So it makes sense then that some of these visa applicants would come to America and already have in their brain that conservatives who love this country are the enemy and are wicked people. And so then they start, it's just natural for them to say, that they're going to shut down these sorts of people. And we even saw that in some of the comments from another Veritas release, and that was where they're calling people of the cross. You see people of the cross, patriots, U.S. flag. We shut them down on Twitter. So, but that's the people they're bringing in. So it's all designed. This is what's amazing to me is what's the end game with these people? We see that China's gaining power. They seem to relish that. America, especially this past week under Joe Biden, is just collapsing. What is their goal? What do they think is going to happen in this utopia they're trying to form?
I think that we're heading towards a system crash. And the reason why we're heading to a system crash is because AI and robotics are getting scary good. And pretty soon we're going to have a AI intelligence that is smarter than anyone living or has lived on the earth. I think we're also about to get cheap robotic labor controlled by these powerful AIs that are going to invalidate everything that our culture has built in terms of like productivity. The fact that our labor had value on an open market, now that's approaching zero. And so I think what's happening is that the elites are getting ready for a collapse of sort of like the entire toolkit of how our society runs. And they're going to replace that with robots and UN smart cities, and they've got an agenda. They want to push that forward, basically create a managed welfare state that they manage and in a way that makes sense when you've got robots that are able to do all that. You could put people on a 4-day work week, which would actually be pretty nice. The thing is that it looks like they also want to snuff out human ingenuity, human autonomy and sovereignty, and replace it with centralized control. And the thing is that we need to be able to preserve that fire of decentralized control, of human sovereignty, recognize that that's a gift from God and a right from God, and that no one's got any ability to take that away from anyone. And whatever the next version of society we create from this technology and the fourth industrial revolution, we need to make sure that human sovereignty is the cornerstone of that fourth industrial revolution.
Oh, I agree with you so much. That's beautiful. So well put. I think we're going to end it there. I don't think it could get any better than that, Zach. Thank you so much. Again, your book that we will, Google Leaks, that we will promote at the Gateway Pundit. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your courage to come out as a whistleblower against Google. I know that wasn't easy. I had an article up earlier on the Gateway Pundit about how they came to your house or something. They were threatening you at times. So I know it hasn't been easy for you, but you're a true hero, and I'd love to talk to you more in the future. So please stay in touch. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, James. It's been a pleasure.